Welcome everyone to this video essay on new media and how it may affect our approach towards cinema and cinema in itself as an art form. This is Amitava. I am the editor of Silhouette Film magazine, and personally for me, I find this subject of new media extremely fascinating and at the same time extremely difficult as well, primarily because it is something that is happening right now at this very moment. It is in that sense live. I think it is always a bit easy to observe phenomena from a retrospective distance. If it is too close and we are actually going through it, the challenge is to dissociate from it and observe the patterns, the trends, and try to extrapolate that to the futuristic experiences which we may have. Nonetheless, I will try to focus on two aspects of new media in the context of India or its effects and see how it, if at all, if it affects cinema. Uh, so I have named this video essay from big data to small cinema. If we now go to the digital evolution and of the internet, things which we all know, but just as a recap, it all started off in 1969 with the ARPANET, which uh, is the predecessor of the internet which we know. And then in 1971, we had the email and the project Gutenberg. And then if we just make a leap forward for through a few decades and come to the 2000s, and there were a lot of things which happened in and around that time. In 1998, we had Google. So Google is actually celebrating 20 years this year. We had Wikipedia, we have Facebook, YouTube, Twitters, all the things which we use right now, and we had this first initiation of something called cloud, which we know very well right now. And in the next decade, in 2010, we have Instagram, we have mass protest using Facebook, we have IPv6 web addresses instead of IPv4, and in the same decade, we have in 2011 we have the Galaxy Note smartphone in October 2011, which by Samsung, and this was phablet, and it is very important because it was the first big screen mobile phone, and that has a relevance in the essay which I am going to present now. Then we had things like the Google Chromecast, and we had open source framework for development for the mobile apps on Android and iOS. And in 2018, on March 17, 2018, there was a news item in New York Times and The Guardian, which revealed that during the election campaigning of Donald Trump, there were a lot of user data which was harnessed. So these two mainly, the size of the mobile screen and using the data of all of us, the users of the internet and the internet services, is of primary importance in my discussion. Now, if we look into the telecom scene in India, and you just look into the figures in a country of around approximately 1,300 million people or 1,400 million people, almost 1,100, almost 1,200 million people are already subscribed to wireless telephony. So what we can see here, and you can also look at the broadband subscribers, the rural uh, telephony subscribers for wireless, the urban telephony subscribers for wireless, and you will see and you will understand that the speed at which the internet spectrum is expanding in India is faster than the literacy growth of the country. Uh, a large percentage of the rural India are illiterate, we all know that. But for them, learning the language, learning how to write, how to read, and then use it in computers is a double dampener. But what statistics are showing that the rate of mobile usage is increasing in the rural area as well, because there is a net addition of 4.44%. So what is actually the game changer? It is the smartphones with uh, with with big screens and the low mobile tariffs, which are becoming lower and lower every passing day. So the mobile platform is actually the superior bridge for the digital divide. So when we go on further in the future and we have the 5Gs, the 6Gs, and the NGs coming out, uh, we will have more and more emphasis on apps using vernacular, using voice, and that will eventually further increase the the rate of, or the the number of subscribers, the penetration, and you see that nothing, not even electricity, nothing has penetrated India the way this telecom scene has done. And if we look specifically on internet and the projection, then we'll see that the rate of mobile internet subscription is very high. So in essence, mobile internet in India is booming. Now, if we look into certain effects of uh, of this growth, this inorganic growth of mobile phone usage, and mobile phone, by mobile phone usage we normally today mean the use of internet. We find almost everyone around us is hooked on to the smartphone, and more often than not, they are probably watching anything which is audiovisual. It may be serials, it may be web series, it may be films, so on and so forth. So every individual, in a sense, is unique, and they have their unique preferences and their unique choices. And suddenly, we all, as consumers, have more to consume, and there are more technologies doing almost the same thing. And there are a plethora of devices, again with possibly overlapping purposes. It is actually the internet-enabled smartphone which is doing this convergence of multiple requirements and blurring the boundaries. How many of us carry cameras with us when we are going out somewhere to take pictures? Apart from the professional photographers, definitely. Most of us are using our mobile phones, and the mobile phones are becoming uh, more sophisticated with respect to the cameras which they host. But undoubtedly, there is a price which we are paying. We now have an abundance of choice, and we suffer from the problems of plenty. Why do we need a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, uh, maybe multiple smartphones for one individual? Do we really need them? And what about the services that we have opted for? Someone who have a Netflix account probably also has an Amazon Prime for retail shopping. Uh, he or she must be having a Vodafone or an Airtel, or any other telecom service provider, and those telephone service providers also offer the same sort of audiovisual experiences. So I have a Vodafone connection. I have Amazon Prime coming free with it. I can also watch films in Vodafone Live. What it has actually done is it has made us lazy and made each of us mini discoverers. We're actually, if you look at it, exhausting our time in trying frantically to discover the new movies on these channels, the new features of our smartphones, the new games, and so on and so forth. Our bedrooms are becoming media rich in the process, as our lives are becoming more and more private. And our children are not spared from it either. They are more interested in gluing themselves onto the tabs and the smartphones instead of going out in the fields and playing physically. as a result, they are becoming unhealthy, obese, and essentially blunt. But that's a different discussion altogether. But the effect of this over encompassing usage of audiovisual uh, sources is having an effect on us. Now, this privatization of lives, which I just discussed, uh, has one positive side to it as well. It gives us a sense of empowerment. We feel that we are unique and that we are being listened to, that we have a voice. When someone can actually send or create an opinion and ask for e-votes or likes and things like that, then you feel that you are actually empowered doing so. Just like when we feel empowered standing in a queue for an hour to cast our physical votes in the electoral process. However, this so-called importance is derived not out of thin air, but it is in storing our own preferences and our previous transaction histories. And I would actually emphasize that two things fostered this privatization. One is the boom of the mobile internet, and the second is the rise of big data. Now, if we just go back a bit and think that the marketing strategies of the telecom service providers, like as I said, Airtel and Vodafone, they are partnering with, say, Amazon Prime Videos. Someone else may be partnering with Netflix in the future, if not now. So what the telecom service providers are doing, they're tracking the usage pattern, and they're continuously suggesting higher data plans. Now, uh, a few years back as well, we had limits on the number of calls which we can make, or the number of minutes which we can make for calls, and the number of SMSs which we can send. But if we look at the plans on which we are now, we have unlimited calls, virtually infinite number of SMSs which we can send in a month. But what is not unlimited is actually the data plan. So what essentially is happening is that we are getting more and more addicted to have and to consume more and more data. I know a person who has 3 GB of prepaid data per day, and she doesn't know what to do. So what she does is she just starts off a serial uh, right in the morning, and that goes on throughout the day because she doesn't know like how to consume this 3 GB of data per day. Also, the existing browsing patterns are probably becoming more data heavy, which means now similar videos will consume more data. And eventually, over a period, we will all consume this additional data as well, which today seems quite high. Tomorrow, it will become just commonplace. And then we will move to the next data plan. So this is a cyclical change, just like even if we don't understand, we think that the higher ROM, the higher RAM of our mobile phones, the higher megapixel size of our cameras are actually worth giving it a try. So to have to ensure that the telecom service providers have or put us on this continuous spree to consume more data, the easiest way to have us addicted is by giving us a plethora of options on the web series, the serials, the films, the music videos, then and so on and so forth. So we are always so that we are always uh, consuming the data and actually benefiting less of us but more of them. And out of these two that I discussed, the rise of big data and the boom of the mobile internet, if we now concentrate on the boom of mobile internet and we just recall an old world definition of cinema, then as you can see from the Oxford Dictionary, the cinema primarily talks about a movie theater. And those early days when we used to go more often to the uh, movie theaters always provide us with a mesmeric appeal. There is a larger than life feeling. Now, when we got the television screens, that larger than life feeling reduced, and no doubt about that. But what television in turn did, they created a bonding with the on screen characters. But still, there was a distance between the spectator and the television screen. There was a physical distance, and even if most of the television characters have become almost like our uh, someone with whom we live in our day-to-day lives, but still there was a physical distance. But if you think of the smartphones actually have reduced this distance significantly, the distance which the television screens offer between the spectator and the screen. That distance is almost gone. You hold the mobile in your hand, in your palm. You can put it wherever you want to. You can do whatever you want to do, and at the same time also put an eye on the mobile screen and watch a film going on. It's even more private than the television viewing, and you can unlike the television, most of the cases, unlike the television, you can actually have the actors, the heroes, the heroines do whatever you want them to do as many times you want. You can pause and play Amitabh Bachchan uh, sh- actually enacting the Diwar dialogues as many times as you want. You can stop and play Salman Khan's, the Shah Rukh Khan's. You can stop and play Madhuri Dixit uh, in a dance sequence as many times as you want. So actually, cinema is coming at the mercy of viewers' whims. So what I think, or what I reflect upon is, isn't cinema, in a metaphorical sense, becoming small with the rise of the mobile internet? There is another aspect to it. When TV first came into being, it had an aspect ratio of 4 is to 3. And for earlier films, till probably the 50s, it was fine. So there was no problem in telecasting them onto the television screens. But as a competition to TV, CinemaScope widescreen film formats were started, and and things became different. You can think of Ben Hur or Lawrence of Arabia, and telecasting them onto the traditional TVs of the time would mean there will be panning and scanning or letterboxing. And I think most of us will identify a lot of films which we have watched on the televisions, even on the Indian televisions. This concept of letterboxing, where we have these black bands on top and bottom of the screen. That same problem is there for mobile phones as well. Most of the mobile phones which we have, they have an aspect ratio of 16 is to 9, which is the widescreen format, or 18 is to 9. But that is not the format, the aspect ratio which film offers. So what I want to what I want to mean is, when we actually watching films on the mobile screens, then there is a distortion in that viewing as well. However, uh, last year in March 15th, 2017, Netflix chief product officer Neil Hunt, in a briefing, said that the company started to explore streaming mobile specific cuts of the original movies and TV shows to satisfy what he said was a growing audience of mobile Netflix watchers. And he specifically mentioned India, where mobile screens are the majority consumption device. So, will this actually make filmmakers choose 16 is to 9 which is the mobile screen aspect ratio, over the 2.39 is to 1, which is more or less the prevalent film aspect ratio. It may well be. Or there may be separate versions for mobile and theatrical releases as well. So, in both these aspects, that's changing of the aspect ratio to 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 satisfy the number of consumers who are hooked onto the mobile internet more than who are probably going into the theaters, and by having the mobile screens, the small mobile screen fitting into the palm of the individuals, and they're playing whatever they want to do with the film, is the film or the cinema becoming small. Let us now go to the other aspect of the discussion, is the rise of big data. I'm not going into what big data means, but uh, uh, in today's digital world, we know that we are constantly leaving behind digital trails when we carry out transactions online, when we through GPS geotagging, when we swipe our cards uh, in retail stores, or even when we are keying in through online retail shopping, when we are active on the Facebook, when we are active on Twitters. And by offering and making digital synchronization possible, not only are the telecom service providers increasing their revenues, but more importantly, they are actually harnessing the nation's digital data into a phantom store. This is circular and cyclical inclusion of individuals as mere agents of data, as creators of data, and hence as consumer. So you just go into Google or you go into Amazon and you shop for something, or you just in Google you just search something, and then you open your Facebook or something else, and on the side panel you find advertisements of similar products, whatever you have just browsed using your using a different window, which is the Google. There are multiple online retailers who provide additional discounts on retail items when they are when they are bought through their mobile apps instead of the online websites accessed from desktop or laptop computers. And this is because of the philosophy that relates the consumer data with individuals who are more than just faceless email IDs in the virtual space. So if you just go into a retail site and you just using your laptop and you just buy something, just give your email ID, that's a faceless thing. But if you are hooked onto your uh, through your through your mobile app, then actually your mobile app is the key identifier is an ID, which is an email ID, and there are multiple apps which are sharing the same email ID. So you have a 360-degree view of the consumer. So consider the amount of data that is tagged to one individual based on his his or her buying patterns, the search patterns, the social behavior patterns, uh, the moment the person's phone and mobile numbers are correlated and identified. This is one of the reasons why Gmail, Facebook, and the likes, and all of them rather, uh, keep on pestering you for your mobile number every now and then. So one example I will give is based on the audience sentiment profiling, marketing strategies are being decided. So we understand now that this huge data, and that is always increasing about one individual. The moment we do something on the digital space, potentially using our mobile phones more than the laptops or the desktops, we are actually increasing uh, characteristics or attributes of us or our behaviors for the marketing teams, the telecom service providers, and the others to actually track and have a trend and use that data for other marketing strategies. So there were two films which off late. One is Ram Leela and one is Chennai Express, where uh, huge lot of posts across Facebook, Twitters, YouTubes were considered, and the marketing strategy was designed. So what they have actually done, uh, they uh, fine-tuned the product before the release, and based the on the data which they had, they decided on the most appropriate release date, the release locations in places which generated positive sentiment. So uh, they didn't actually release the film all over India like most of the other films do. But based on the sentiments, the positive sentiments in tweeters, they found out the zones where the sentiments are positive, and they found that it makes more sense to actually release the films in those areas rather than everywhere else and spend a lot of money. So uh, the other example is a case study where using IBM Watson, there was a film called Morgan, with the entire film trailer was built based on big data. Now, this big data is not actually the data of the subscribers, but this is uh, the data of 100 horror movies which were fed into the computer. So, based on the storyline which this film had, and based on the key attributes of the other 100 horror movies, the computer actually picked up places from the film and made into a trailer. So that is the other side of it, of the big data. One is the consumer side of it, which helps in the marketing strategy. The other is uh, the history, the archives which we have, and using that archive, actually trying to make out ways so that the product which is being made is made in a better way. Now, if we combine these two, uh, so one is the content understanding. So the example which I gave, or if you can, if I can give another one, Netflix actually slice and dice each movie content into more than 70,000 characteristics. So it becomes an extremely granular mosaic of movie genre. So you name anything, you just write a film where a man with probably a fractured left leg, wearing a watch on the right hand, smoking a cigar, uh, meets uh, a woman in a blue dress in half of the movie, he will get something in return. So it is that granular. So that is one aspect of it, where the existing content, we are making it very granular to create data so that we have every insight to the archive which we have. The other side is the audience profiling. So the one which I discussed a while ago. So we have every individual, tons and tons of data of the individuals, their patterns, their social behaviors, and so on and so forth. And when we marry these two, uh, the probable future might be that studios are hoping to choose and tailor their movies from the very start and identify some kind of magic formula to screenwriting. So, whenever we are making a film uh, and we know the genre, probably the film studios or maybe the producer or someone will say that, okay, hey, from the content understanding, I know that, okay, these things work. And also from the audience profiling, I know that the audience at this point in time is actually looking for this type of things. So why don't you write your script in this way? So isn't this huge data, both from content understanding and the audience profiling, that huge data, in a sense, making cinema small? Where is that creative license of the script writer, the creative license of the director? Uh, Before I end, so these are all reflections. These are caveats which may not be proved correct in the future. But before I close, I will just give two examples uh, in support of my discomfort towards this type of a probable future. Uh, One is from a quotation from one of the greatest filmmakers of all times, Ingmar Bergman, and he says, quote, "The human face is the most cinematographic thing that exists because it changes the whole time," unquote. Now, on which mobile screen, however clear the mobile screen is, with the distractions which you have in the traditional mobile viewing, you will get to have that that expression on the human face communicated the same way you will have when you watch the same thing on a big screen in a theater. That experience will never be the same. I will also uh, point out to a person called Mr. Steve Jobs, who turned the Apple products into a global brand, not by giving people what they already knew they needed, but actually by giving them something what they did not know they wanted, something they did not even know could exist. So that is my hope that with the rise of big data, with so much information about the content, about the audience, about all of us, and even with the barrage of the new mobile phones with the super high definition screens, cinema will still remain big. Thank you.